We'll see who's barking on Saturday. Hey everybody, welcome into Classic City Talks by Classic City Locks. We're your hosts. I'm Wes.
I'm Mike.
And here you go. We got your Week 5 college football predictions for you coming up. First, we got a recap of last week. A very, very rough week, if I do say so myself. I actually went 6-15, which I hope is my worst performance of the year.
Yeah, but, I went 8-13. Couple close ones. It was another wild week. It was like week 2, 2.0.
It was like week 2. Like last week, while we were making the show, I feel like us sitting here saying like, man, these lines aren't that entertaining. I feel like it's just going to be a lot of favorites this week. And you know what happened? The favorites were correct 20% of the time last week.
It was brutal.
It was very
week
rough.
2 was like, we both did great. So
yeah,
we're ready to bounce back.
So the weekly standings, Mike gets the victory and moves on. It's 3-1. And overall, Mike has improved. Well, I guess not improved, but to 39-44, and I am 34-49, which is just a whole lot of yikes. But I will clarify that by saying we're making these picks earlier in the week because of our recording capabilities. So lines move, players get hurt, players announce they're starting, and hindsight gets the better of you. So
yeah.
With all that being said, we got an exciting Week 5 ready for you, and let's get straight into it. First game.
Yeah, first game. Like Wes said, it's a really interesting week. Another note before we get started, we could see some even more interesting stuff because we're dealing with a hurricane.
Yeah.
So a couple games have been moved. We'll see how this hurricane specifically impacts primetime NC State at Clemson.
Yeah.
But jumping into game 1, we have unranked Utah State going into Provo to play number 19 BYU.
Yeah.
BYU is favored by 24.5 here. Not a whole lot I want to say here other than just 2 stat lines that stuck out to me. BYU defense allowing 26 points a game, while their offense is putting up only 33. I am not a fan of this. We watched them have a really tough time with Wyoming at home. And because of that, I don't really see any reason that BYU is going to go blow them out. So I think I'm going to go with Utah State here to cover 24.5.
Wow, that is interesting. I'm going to take the opposite viewpoint. I'm going to take BYU to cover. This is a game last week. We had the line at 28.5, and it shifted to 21.5 before the kickoff.
Yeah.
So that kind of explains that pick for you. If you ever get a 7-point swing in a point spread, you should definitely rethink your pick.
Maybe
there.
switch to money line or switch to the other pick.
But yeah, I'll ride with BYU again this week. I think
right.
that Utah State won't be as good as Wyoming.
All right.
Well, then we got Washington, UCLA. UCLA gets 3.5 points, so Washington needs to win by 4 to cover. This game is on Friday night, and the BYU game is on Thursday night. So if you want to bet on these, you need to get moving. They might have already actually happened by the time this video gets out.
We'll try and get it out, but
yeah, Washington, man, they are coming alive here. Getting a lot of media attention this week.
Mm-hmm.
Getting ranked in the AP poll after knocking off Michigan State and then taking care of business against Stanford last week. UCLA is a much better team than Stanford is, and they have to play them away. UCLA is, I think, ranked only a few spots behind Washington in FPI.
They're 38.
They're 38? What is Washington?
Washington is 18.
Oh.
Still, 38 is
it's a lot closer.
Not bad.
It's better than when I first looked at this game. I thought, man, why is UCLA only a 4-point dog in it? But so I'm gonna go a little crazy here and take the Bruins. I'll take UCLA to cover this one.
That's good luck with that. I am totally confident in Washington here, minus 3.5. Statistically, very similar teams, both offenses putting up over 500 yards and 40 points a game. But like I said, Washington is 18, FPI, UCLA is 38, and I just think that Washington has a better record. 3.5 points for UCLA is a little enticing because statistically they're similar, but look at who UCLA's played. They played Colorado, fair. Who is just easily one of the worst Power 5 teams right now. They're like a Georgia Tech.
I'm pretty sure they're winless, too. So.
Yeah.
But
They beat up on Alabama State. Congrats. They let Bowling Green score 17. Okay. And they almost lost to South Alabama. So, I've heard some people say South Alabama is not as bad as you think. But still, I mean, when you have Washington, who has a win over Michigan State, who is unranked now, but we were really high on them.
yeah, quality
and they
football program.
took care of business against Stanford. I'm taking Washington. Give me them. All right, up next, we have number 7, Kentucky, going into Oxford to play number 14, Ole Miss. Ole Miss favored here by 6.5. So they may be ranked lower, but they're getting 6.5, or they're favored by 6.5. So both teams kind of, little lackluster last week. Neither of them covered. Kentucky only beat Northern Illinois by 1 point, or not 1 point, 1 score by 7. And Ole Miss, I think that they might have beaten Tulsa by 1 score as well, maybe a little more. But yeah, both of them not too great. Despite this, things that stuck out to me: Ole Miss putting up 280 rushing yards a game. They have established themselves as a rushing team, and they've proven that Jackson Dart can run the ball too.
Mm-hmm.
Other thing that stood out to me: Kentucky. They gave up 5 sacks to Northern Illinois. And this Ole Miss pass rush is elite. They're one of the best in the country. Because of this, while I know we like Kentucky, I am taking Ole Miss here.
Wow. Injury report, injury report, injury report. Kentucky getting back their leading rusher for this game.
I know they are.
Ole Miss, their 2 leading rushers, Zach Evans and the guy behind him, are beat up, and it's unknown whether they'll play in this game. Yep. I'm taking the Cats with the 6.5 points.
Oh, let me verify this.
I think they could very well win outright against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I don't know who's going to be playing for him, Dart or Alton, whatever the other guy's name is. I'm sorry. But, yeah, man, I'm going with the Cats to cover this one at Oxford. I think that 6.5 is a little disrespectful. I could see Ole Miss winning by 3. That's kind of like my kiss of death, because you've seen our TikTok. I could see this game be a 1-score game, and then we all know what happens. But
I will say, I haven't done this before, but based off of that, I do see what you're talking about. They're like not sure they're even gonna be out there. Lane Kiffin has not said anything positive, it seems.
Yeah.
My whole reason that I picked them is because I thought that they'd be able to bully them with the rush game, and I think that Ole Miss's pass rush is good, but without the run game being as strong, I'm going to take Kentucky here as well.
Oh,
yeah, definitely. No, that changes the whole, because I'm not expecting them to put on a light show with throwing the ball. They're going to beat them by running if they win.
I love nothing more than convincing Mike of the wrong pick.
This is why you watch. If this is true and like he doesn't actually play, the Wildcats are taking this.
Yeah. Well, pay attention to that.
Keep your eyes peeled for the injury report.
Michigan goes into Iowa to take on the Hawkeyes, and Michigan is favored by 10.5.
Yeah.
Wow, this one is tough because Michigan, we were really high on last week, 17.5 spread against Maryland, and they only ended up winning by 7 at home.
Props to Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland did a good job, surprised us a little bit. I don't think that Iowa is as good as Maryland.
I don't either.
10.5 is a lot easier to cover than 17.5.
The question is that Iowa defense. That's what they're known for. They have, just not to interrupt you real quick,
No.
Their defense and their offensive rating is the biggest gap in the country.
Polar opposites.
Like, it's not even close.
Yeah.
So.
With that being said, I'll take the Wolverines. I got hurt by them last week. Seen a couple people lean in Iowa, but I've seen a little bit of movement on this line, I believe, up to 11 or 11.5. So I'm going to ride with the Wolverines again this week.
I am also going to stick with them. Face value, a little worried about that Iowa defense, but I think that Michigan's offense is just going to be too much to them. They had a bit of a hiccup against Maryland, and I think we learned a lot more about Maryland rather than oh no, Michigan's not actually good. No, I think we learned that Maryland's actually not bad.
Right.
Iowa, I do not think is good. I just think that they have a good defense. But this Michigan offense, 254 passing yards, 234 rushing yards a game. On the flip side, that Iowa offense is getting just over 100 yards rushing a game and just over 130 passing. And this Michigan defense is good enough to make them suffer even more. So I'm taking the Wolverines.
All right. I like it.
Up next, Oklahoma. Oklahoma going to play TCU.
Rough weekend for the
Tough.
Sooners last week.
They are allergic to beating Kansas State. They just can't beat them. And you know what's funny? Martinez,
Yeah,
he literally played for Nebraska.
I know.
And they've played him before. They just can't. I don't know, man. Anyway, number 18, Oklahoma is favored by 6.5 against TCU here. Man, just a brutal week for them. But I really like this Oklahoma offense. I still believe in Dylan Gabriel, Brent Venables. I don't see them losing 2 games in a row, and I think they can win by a touchdown. TCU's not bad. We're getting into conference play here.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think they had an off game. I seriously think that it's like a weird thing. They're just like nervous about playing Kansas State, things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that it was just a hiccup, and they're going to right the ship and win by 7 at least.
Yeah, story of this game is going to be you took your blow, how do you recover from it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bleeding, wounded animal is Oklahoma right now. I don't see them losing 2 games in a row.
Not at all.
I think that they will cover this by 7. Yeah, I'm going to ride with the Sooners in this one as well.
You got to think about where they are right now. They're not down and out of the playoff race, and they want to win the Big 12.
Yeah,
I mean, you've got a
exactly.
competitive Big 12 right now. Kansas Jayhawks 4-0. They're ready to bounce back.
I'm interested to see Venables after losing his first game as a head coach. So,
Definitely.
taking the Sooners. Another game in a great conference matchup, we got Purdue headed into Minnesota to take on the Golden Gophers. They are favored by 10.5 in this one. So Minnesota needs 11 to cover this.
Uh-huh.
Man, I'm going to take the Golden Gophers. They were a great team 2 years ago. Last year they kind of fell off the map, but I think a lot of people are forgetting about that season. And man, they just whooped Michigan State like 31-7 or something.
34-7. I just pulled it up. They massacred them.
And Michigan State, man, I gotta think they're better than Purdue. Purdue,
They are.
they had that close game with Penn State that I'm remembering of the first game of the season, which is why I originally picked Purdue in this one. But I also saw some line shifting on this one to Minnesota up to like 12 even.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Minnesota to cover at 10.5.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Minnesota, I mean, if you watched our TikTok, we said that they're like an underrated team right now. They are like just all around amazing. Their defense is allowing 6 points a game, under 200 yards, and their offense is balling. Yeah. I mean, they are 543 yards, 45.8 points a game, and this is a Purdue team that literally beat Florida Atlantic by 2 points. And while Michigan State is not ranked on the flip side, when you're looking at Minnesota, the fact that they manhandled them, and that was like no Florida Atlantic.
Yeah.
The record is on Minnesota's side as well in terms of matchups, so I'm taking the Golden Gophers as well.
All right.
Up next, another very tough matchup. We have Texas Tech going to play number 25 Kansas State. Kansas State favored by 7.5.
Yeah.
Oh, man. This is a tough one because I feel like Texas Tech has been all over the map this year. They squeaked out a win against Houston. They just beat Texas.
Yeah. Crazy game.
But then they lose to NC State. All over the place. I'm going to lean towards Kansas State here. I would take Kansas State money line over the spread. I would say if you're looking at like maybe making a parlay or betting, I would stay away from this one. But I'm going to take Kansas State to cover 7.5 just because I feel like it's the home field advantage. They're pretty similar teams, and I'm just going to stick with that.
Yeah, I'm going to take the flip side of this one. I'm going to go with Texas Tech. They've been a different team on the road than they have been at home, so I'm interested to see if they can go into this environment and compete. I think that either of these teams has a chance to win this game, which is why I'm not confident in the 7.5 spread for Kansas State. So I'm going to take Texas Tech with the points in this one.
All right. Yeah, that was easily one of my toughest ones that I've looked at.
Well, then we move on to Oregon State going in to face Utah. Utah favored by 10.5 in this one. And man, Oregon State just played a very impressive game against USC.
Yeah.
Down until that final minute, they could have won that thing. Even despite losing the turnover battle by 4. USC was plus 4 in turnovers.
And USC didn't even get a touchdown until the 4th.
Yeah.
To that final minute.
And Utah, they just beat up on Arizona State last week. They covered 15.5 against them. Utah getting them at home. This is tough, but Oregon State, another one of those sleeper teams that we picked. I'm not very confident in this one, but I'm going to stick with them I'm going to ride with Oregon State in this one to cover, getting the points at 10.5.
Yeah, I think that Oregon State, another team that we think is slept on, only with that one slip up to a good USC team, I'm taking those points. I mean, Utah's good, but Oregon State is scrappy. Like Wes said, turnovers or not, they lost by 3 in a nail-biter. So I think that USC is better than Utah, just my opinion. And that Oregon State defense, they're allowing less yards than USC's defense, and they're allowing barely any more points than them. So comparable there. I think that they can keep it close enough to cover 10.5. Give me Oregon State.
Wow, that's I expected you to take Utah in that one.
No,
so I'm interested.
The moment I looked at that one, I was enticed, and then when I looked into the stats, you look at USC and Oregon State's defense, very comparable. I think that they can get it done.
I hope that the theme of the week becomes Pac-12 teams beating up on each other. They always have such great teams. And then somehow, like Stanford, Oregon State comes out of nowhere and just upsets the favorite to win the Pac-12. So
we'll get to Stanford. They're not doing that this week.
Well, anyways.
Up next we have number 2 Alabama going to play number 20 Arkansas. Alabama's favored by 16.5. Arkansas coming off an absolute heartbreak of a loss at a neutral site to Texas A&M. This is one that I've gone back and forth on. Arkansas, we were high on, and I thought they deserved that top 10 ranking. But when I look more into their record, I'm just not convinced as much as I was in the past. Just the quality of teams they have played. Let's take a look. They played Texas A&M, lost 23-21. They beat Cincinnati, which is unranked now, by 7. They let South Carolina score 30. And they let Missouri State score 27. I think that that's not good enough. Even though you're playing at home, I'm taking Alabama here, covering 16.5.
Well, I'm going to stick with the Hogs, and I'm going to pick Arkansas on this one. They covered for me last week. Man.
By 0.5. I
took
them too.
But KJ Jefferson literally, oh my gosh. I never want to criticize a player. I'm not going to criticize the man himself, but the decision to jump for the end zone on first down, I believe, first and goal, when you're up 14-0, he loses the ball, Texas A&M returns it for a touchdown. If he hadn't done that, I think Arkansas would have won that game by like 14.
That was definitely the momentum shifter.
And, I mean, we were looking at this before the show. Arkansas-Alabama was a 7-point game last year. I don't think that Arkansas, well, maybe they are as good as they were last year. I'm going to ride with Arkansas on this one. 16.5 is just too many for me at home. I think they can keep it within 17.
Do you think they'll win?
I do not think they will win.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. We'll see. But I'm sticking with Alabama, West taking Arkansas. A lot of disagreements this week.
Only serves to better my record.
Up next, we have Northwestern going in to take on number 11, Penn State. Penn State favored by 25.5. They did not cover last week.
Yeah, one of our best bets that missed last week.
Against
very unfortunate. Central Michigan.
Central Michigan, yeah.
What happened, man?
Yeah, I think that Penn State has been kind of streaky. You know, they whooped Auburn, who I think is just not good because they squeaked out a win. Well, no, they didn't even squeak out a win. Missouri handed them a win last week. And I think, Northwestern, they beat Nebraska. Not a great Nebraska team, but, I think it'll be a solid, normal Big Ten matchup. 25.5 is pretty big. And because of that, I'm going to take Northwestern here.
Wow.
Yes.
Really?
I am.
Wow. That surprises me. I am taking the opposite. I'm riding with the Nittany Lions again. Northwestern, let me read it to you here. They've beaten Nebraska. They lost to Duke by 8. They lost to Southern Illinois by 7. They lost to Miami of Ohio by 3.
Okay, but 25.5 is ridiculous.
Penn State, like you said, they're streaky. They throttled Auburn, then they struggle against Central Michigan, so it's only fair that they throttle the next team that they play, which I believe is Northwestern.
They struggled against Purdue.
That was week 1.
They beat them by 4. Who cares?
Purdue is much better than Northwestern.
I don't know. 25.5 is just a big line. It's a big line.
I'm taking Penn State if the line moves.
So you think they are winning by 4 scores?
26.
Not happening. Not happening. All right.
Give me Penn State. Give me the Nittany Lions. That worked out so well for me last time. But anyways, Oklahoma State Baylor. I think this is probably my favorite matchup this week. Baylor's favored by 2.5 at home. Oklahoma State coming off a bye week. Baylor coming off a tough game against Iowa State, which they won as underdogs. And now they're back to being favored. What do you got to say about this one?
Yeah, this one, I think that kind of been the story all year. Oklahoma State's kind of finding themselves, and they've been solid. They've been everything that we've kind of really wanted, other than not covering against Central Michigan that one time. They've took care of business against Arizona State, and, Baylor, another team that's kind of disappointed us here and there. I mean, they got whooped by BYU.
Yeah, that was the one. It was overtime.
I know it was overtime, but man, I've believed in Oklahoma State the whole year, other than not covering that one time. I think that I have to take the points because Baylor's defense is just not good. Oklahoma State is balling. They can move the ball. That offense is legit. And I think that it's going to be a shootout potentially because both of them are kind of lackluster on defense.
Yeah.
So I just have to take the points there. I'm going to take Oklahoma State plus 2.5.
Wow. Well, I had Oklahoma State penciled in, and then you say that, and everything you say I have to not listen to. So here we go, me looking for any way that Oklahoma State can blow this, and Baylor wins by 3. Spencer Sanders, in this matchup last year, had 4 interceptions.
Okay, come
He had
on. That's a
4
fluke. That's a
interceptions.
fluke. And this Baylor
It's a
defense,
very different defense.
This Baylor defense is worse this year.
I agree, it is. But
So ride with me.
Vegas has got to know something, man.
It's just because they're betting on them at home.
I mean, but
You're
Oklahoma
going to
State,
regret this.
Oklahoma State does have that factor of losing in the championship game of on
They're
the goal
ready.
line.
They are ready.
I'll stay with Oklahoma State
Yes,
just for that
let's go.
fact. Give me the points and the Cowboys in this
You
one.
will remember this, and you will not forget. All right.
This clip is going in next week's video. or on a TikTok, and you can have the one playing the Curb Your Enthusiasm behind you. But okay, moving on to a game we don't have much to say about, or at least I
Well,
don't.
I actually do.
Rutgers at Ohio State. The line is 41.5. This is about as low of a conference matchup as you're gonna get. I'm taking Rutgers in this one, honestly. I think that Ohio State just throttled Wisconsin, who I believe is a lot better than Rutgers. But I think
That's a huge line.
I know, exactly. Just like last week, I mean, Wisconsin had 7 points going into the fourth quarter, and they ended up with 17, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that Rutgers could do the same thing here and get a backdoor cover in this one, so going with them.
Yeah, here's a fun fact for you. A lot of people at face value would think, oh, Rutgers, Ohio State's going to throttle them. And they will. But they won't throttle them by 41.5. Over the last 3 meetings, they've won by 31 points on average. Ohio State has.
Okay.
I don't think that Ohio State's going to have trouble with them, but I think that they're going to slow down at the end. And, I just don't think that in this conference matchup they're going to beat them by 42 points. So
Yeah.
give me Rutgers here.
All right. Interesting.
All right, who we got next? We got number 22, Wake Forest, going to play number 23, Florida State.
Yeah.
Florida State favored by 7.5 here. Another matchup, which, 2 big things. Wake Forest, I am impressed with. An absolute devastating loss to Clemson last week. So close. So close to winning it there. And Florida State, hats off. They're getting it done. But I know it's at home. I don't understand favoring Florida State by over 6.5. 7.5? So they got to win by more than a touchdown.
That line is rough.
It's a tough line, and we saw this exact line with Wake Forest last week against Clemson. And what did Clemson do? They won by 6. They couldn't cover. And I think that Clemson, while we are very critical of them, is better than Florida State. I think that Wake Forest's offense is awesome. Wake Forest did get to play at home last week, but I don't think that Florida State has played anyone good enough to justify beating by Wake Forest by over a touchdown.
I beat LSU.
Yeah, okay. They beat an LSU team that has not been ranked this year. Just a very mid team.
An LSU team that is 7th in the power rankings.
Yeah, I do not buy that at all. No, I'm taking Wake Forest here. I've been riding with them all year.
Yeah.
I trust them. They delivered for me last week. sticking with them.
I want to take Florida State here, but 7.5 is just too many for me.
It burned you last week.
I'm taking Florida State to win outright, but I'm taking Wake Forest to cover, unfortunately.
All right.
Saddens me to do so, but Texas A&M going into Starkville, Mississippi to take on Mississippi State. Mississippi State is favored by 3.5 in this one. Very interesting. Texas A&M, unfortunately, losing Anias Smith for the season in that game against Arkansas last week. And man, as much as we just talked about it, I think that they kind of won on a gimme it from Arkansas. Oh. Mississippi State is a great football team, don't get me wrong. I think they underperformed against LSU. Man, I think they'll win this one outright. But Texas A&M is kind of on a mission now.
They are.
You give me 3.5 points, our least favorite spread. I'm going to roll with the Aggies. I'm going to switch up my tone on them this season. So give me Texas A&M in this one.
Yeah, I think that just with getting the points, 3.5 points, for ranked A&M, Mississippi State unranked. While they are good, I feel like they're kind of in this situation a lot of the times throughout the years. Like, they're kind of like scrappy Western team. You don't really like to play them on the road. But I'm going to have to err on the side of taking those points. I think that if A&M can beat Arkansas, who is better than Mississippi State, I think so, and they beat Miami, I think that they can beat Mississippi State. So if you're giving me the points, I got to take it.
Wow.
Give me A&M.
Makes me want to switch to Mississippi State. Will I do it? You better announce the next game before I switch.
All right. Up next, we have number 1 Georgia going to Columbia, Missouri to play Missouri Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
Very lackluster team. Georgia favored by 27.5. Whew, Georgia. What were we doing last week? Letting Kent State score 22 points.
Embarrassing.
We said that we thought that Georgia looked like they went out on the town the night before.
Yeah.
Like, nobody... What were we doing? And like we said, we don't like to criticize individual players, but Ladd McConkey, muffed punt, dropped the touchdown pass.
Fumble.
I think that he's dropped another
pass,
touchdown pass. Yeah, the short one. I think he's amazing, and I think he just had an off game.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the mistakes that he made led to lots of touchdowns points, touchdowns, whatever, for Kent State. I think that Kirby is beyond angry, and Missouri is terrible. I'm going to take the Dogs, covering 27.5 to get back on track here.
All right, well, you know me. I am, 0-4 now at predicting the Georgia spread. I take them when they're on the road. I don't take them when they're on the road and they win by a ton. And then I take them when they're at home and they lose. They don't cover against cupcake teams. Mm-hmm. So I am flipping a coin on this one as we speak. Heads, it's Georgia. Tails, it's Missouri. Since I have no skill at predicting this one. It's heads. So I guess I'm riding with the Bulldogs in this one.
Let's go.
Give me Georgia. And then we move on to another marquee matchup this week. NC State going in to face the Clemson Tigers. Watch out for the hurricane in this one.
Yeah.
It's going to be pouring. I heard someone tell me before this that the eye of the hurricane is going to be over Clemson during this game. Maybe at 9 a.m., maybe before it. But, this 6.5 Clemson is favored by. Should tell you that before I give you my pick. I'm taking NC State in this one. I've ridden with Clemson for a long time, but I could see NC State winning this one outright. They had a great game last year. Clemson's going to be angry at home.
Last year.
I know, which is why Clemson is going to be upset. But Clemson just had a really rough game again at Wake Forest where their defense allowed 38 points. That is a huge concern to me. Now, the key to this game is going to be running the ball.
Yes, exactly.
How well will they be able to run the ball in that wet, rainy, windy hurricane weather?
Dabo himself said that they're going to have to run it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I could see this game going either way. So, you give me NC State and the points, I'll take it.
Yeah, I wish I could have gone first because, yes, I am also taking NC State here. Main thing is they're a scrappy team. They beat Clemson last year. And I think that this is just going to be a very gross, gritty game because they literally could get 50-mile-an-hour winds. They're not going to be able to throw the ball. Dabo himself said, we are going to have to run the ball. I know Shipley said he's excited. I don't really know why he would be excited to play during a hurricane. Maybe just because he's going to get to run a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you give me those points in that very uncomfortable situation. Two good teams. I mean, Clemson has disappointed us, but they're not bad. Two good teams going at it. You give me the points with a hurricane to back it up. I'm taking NC State to cover here.
All right.
Up next, we have Georgia Tech, who have just fired Jeff Collins.
And their athletic director.
Going into play number 24, Pitt. Pitt favored by 24.5. Pitt has burned us, but there's been a trend. After teams fire their head coach, it has not gone well. I know that Keaton Slovis is back. You're playing at Pittsburgh. Pitt's shown that they are a low 20s ranked team. Georgia Tech has shown they are a terrible team. So I will take Pitt to bounce back, get a solid victory over over a Power 5 opponent. Give me Pitt to cover 24.5 as Georgia Tech continues to tailspin.
Yeah, this is giving me Nebraska-Oklahoma vibes after Nebraska fired Scott Frost. Georgia Tech, man, they lost 42-0 to Mississippi, and then they just lost 27-10 to UCF. Their only win this season is against Western Carolina. 24.5. Man, Pitt just failed to cover against an FCS opponent last week in Rhode Island.
Another thing I would say, just real quick, is Ole Miss crushed them by running the ball the whole time, and we know that Pitt, while Keaton Slovis should throw more, like to run the ball. So that's another reason I'm taking them.
I'm going to take Tech in this one. What the heck?
All right.
I like the Yellow Jackets.
All right. It's your funeral, dude.
Give them to me. Speaking of funerals, Arizona State going into USC. USC favored by 26.5 in this one, which I think is a bit too much. So I'm also going to have another funeral for myself and take Arizona State in this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you're...
You believe in Emory Jones.
I do. I believe in the backdoor cover. Look at what happened last week. I mean, they didn't cover, but they scored a touchdown with like a minute left. What was it you were watching? Yeah, they got
a poverty touchdown in the last 2 minutes.
Exactly. So I see them doing that again this week.
Oh, at USC.
Yep.
Okay, Wes. All right.
27 is too much.
Give me USC here covering them. I think that USC got caught sleeping last week against Oregon State, who's better than they thought. Oregon State's not bad. Arizona State's bad. They fired their coach, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
So they're still kind of reeling from that. Emory Jones is not your guy.
Every episode he gets mentioned for some reason. He
does. We talked about this. Every single episode we somehow bring up Emory Jones in some capacity. Yeah, I think that USC's offense is awesome. We've seen them absolutely destroying people all season.
But that defense
is
it's questionable.
It's questionable, but it's not bad.
I don't
think that Arizona State's offense is better than USC's defense. I think that after that scary win, they're ready to go into conference play and just smack Arizona State in front of that home crowd.
But wouldn't this make Arizona State's season if they could cover against USC?
They're not going to. They can't.
This is Wes's week of picking.
Caleb Williams is a dog, dude.
Well, Wes's week of picking head coachless teams in Georgia Tech and Arizona State.
Emory Jones is not a dog, dude. Caleb Williams is.
We'll see who's barking on Saturday. Stanford goes in to take on Oregon in our last matchup of the week.
Another team that just dropped the ball last week.
Yeah.
Oregon. They won, but dang. They were disappointing at the end.
You know, I'm impressed with that Oregon performance. They were down 17-0 or 17-3, something like that.
On the road.
And came back. I would not look at that game and shun Oregon for it.
No,
I think
not
that was
at all.
An impressive performance and a very big road test that they got out of the way. Hats off to Dan Lanning and Bo Nix as well. So I'm going to take Oregon in this one to cover 16.5 against Stanford. I know Mike hates Stanford, so he's probably also taking the Ducks in this one.
Yeah, give me the Ducks. I don't think that Stanford is that good. Yeah, they put up 28 on USC, but USC outscored them by plenty. Washington took care of business against them just in a similar fashion to USC. And Oregon's hit their stride. Like Wes said, it was a quality win. While they didn't cover, they let the Washington State score a touchdown to ruin the comeback cover.
I had them.
Doesn't matter, though. Oregon has found themselves after being beaten senseless week 1. They've woken up.
And what have I been telling you?
No, you're right. I am impressed with them, and I don't think Stanford is good. Oregon has found themselves. That offense is rolling, and the biggest thing that comes away from last week for me, on the road, huge comeback win against a scrappy Washington State team, which is better than Stanford. You're playing Stanford at home, 16.5. Give me the Ducks.
Well, there you have it. I was feeling very confident coming into this. Don't feel as confident leaving it, but I think that maybe one of us has struck gold this week. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a feeling that one of us is going to come back on the show next week and just be absolutely just heartbroken at what happened.
I don't know. Not going to be me.
It's not going to be me.
Not going to be me.
Well,
that's what we like. We like disagreements.
Yeah.
Other than that, those are our Week 5 picks. Stay tuned on TikTok and Twitter for some more announcements. But other than that, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe the video. It would mean a lot to us.
Yeah, you think that we're totally way off base, we miss anything, you want to be on the show, comment below.